Good luck.
Hey there, Postal here. So what are we taking out here? This doesn't. Wait a minute. Is this the It's the I-210. Oh boy, what are we getting ourselves into? Well, I wanted to post a video on this last week when there was the discounts. What was it? Silver Arrows, I think it was called. On the MiG line. This is the Tier 6 on the MiG-15 line. So much disparaged Tier 6 altitude fighter, and I am quick to admit I definitely am not somebody that was singing the praises of this plane. First time I went down this line, absolutely gutted me. Hated this freaking thing. To the point that, oh my god, am I gonna die here? Is I'm a moron. To the point that I actually stopped grinding this line because I just hated this plane so much. I bought the plane back, had some really good games in it, and came to the conclusion, you know, like so many planes in this game, that the issue wasn't necessarily the plane. Although, don't get me wrong, and we'll go over it when we get back to the hangar, this plane is not overly strong either. But the biggest issue with the plane when I first played it was the pilot, aka the Postal. This plane is not a turn fighter, right? So, knowing me from 2 years ago, I probably played it more turny than it needed to be. It is a quote-unquote altitude fighter. It is not the fastest of the Tier 6 fighters. In fact, it's got just okay speed. It is the lowest altitude of the 3 altitude fighters, but it's also pretty maneuverable for an altitude fighter. Not that it's a turn fighter by any means. Do not get that mixed up. Let's see if we can get this.
Enemy force is attacking the command center.
Fortunately, this BF-109E is specialized, so he's definitely going to be able to outturn me. But luckily we've got some help. We'll get our 20mm cannon on target here. Excellent. There's two 20mm cannons, and so that's really the thing that separates this plane from the BF-109F and the P-51A. Both of those planes rely a lot on machine guns. This plane doesn't have machine guns. It only has two 20mm cannons, which can be underwhelming to say the least, but to be honest, all of the Tier 6 fighters are pretty underwhelming when it comes to damage output. What separates this from those other two is, yeah, it's just cannons. There's only one 20mm cannon on the BF-109F, and there's none on the P-51A. And so take advantage of that. Yeah, your quote-unquote damage per second is the weakest of the 3. But you can definitely get some decent shots in versus your enemies. Yeah, the damage per second might be the least, but you're getting crits, you're doing that kind of heavy damage. So he knocked out this engine, so now we'll be able to stick with this guy a little bit more. Got a tappity-tap, because this is oh, dude. These are cannons, so they will overheat. In fact, big downfall of this particular plane is that the cannons overheat way more than I want them to. Keep in mind I've got a 2-point pilot on here, so my accuracy isn't quite what I want it to be. Can we please get that? Can we? That would be super swell if we could. We've got everything I can really capture. See, I'm trying to not overheat the cannons. It's not really working. This guy can definitely outturn us. It's basically an I-17, right? Tier 5 version of an I-17 is what this plane is. Premium plane. Got him knocked out. That's pretty nice. Oh no! There's another fighter somewhere around here. Spitfire. I'm gonna be dead anyway, so let's just try to take out this plane. Ah! Can't seem to get my shots on. Tails knocked out. F7, can I get an F7 help? Hey, look at that! I love it when F7 works properly. Try to get these cannons on target again. Again, this is really the frustrating part of this plane, is just how long it takes to kill something sometimes. Yeah, you can do some crits. You know, it just kind of helps you sit behind something longer. But it doesn't mean that you're putting huge amounts of damage out. Clearly we're not. Clearly we need some more frickin' hit points, that's for sure. Excellent. Let's go ahead and get some of this altitude that I keep talking about. Been hanging out down here near the bottom. They've got both mining facilities. Really, really quite frustrating. How they got both mining facilities, I don't know, because it's not like they've got anybody that's doing terribly great ground damage. Let's see if I can survive this. Probably not. Oh, luckily we've got a friend hitting him as well. Let's turn back around. Get people to go after him. I think I can get this Spitfire knocked out if he's not dead already. Get this BF-109 knocked out.
You'll soon be cut off from support. I say again, support will not be available.
Come on, don't overheat the cannons. I cannot outturn him, so let's not try to outturn him. He's specialized, I am not. We'll go after somebody that's moving away from him. Oh, come on, cannons. He's still alive. There we go. Oh my goodness, I feel like we are just on the edge of our freaking game here. Barely, barely, barely. Our BF-109E has quit, which seems to be freaking theme nowadays. God forbid anybody not quit this game.
They've almost got us.
Yeah, they almost got us for sure. Okay, there's a bomber up top here. Let's get our boost on. It's a freaking B-17. Oh my goodness. Oh, they do have a, that's gotta be a human if it's way up there. I can't keep chasing him. Yeah, they do have J, but he's not really effective, right? Nice, we got that other plant. That's gonna help us actually get this freaking game won. Now the issue is, am I gonna survive a head-on with an XP-44? Probably not. So let's try to turn away, get our guns on target here. That BF-109E is coming inbound here. Is he paying attention? Doesn't seem like it. What? I was not expecting that to happen. I was not attempting to ram him at all, actually. But our Soviet Stalinium armor apparently protected us there. Not that it would have mattered. We were going to win that anyway.
We'll be waiting for you back home.
And we had a pretty darn good battle. I'll definitely take that. Barely won, but a win is a win. And we'll take it. So this plane can just do a little bit of everything where you need it to. It's not a carry plane. It just is not a carry plane. We were able to take the sector that was really the most important and hold on to it. But barely. Let's head back. Alright, so we were able to get, 15 kills there. 15,000 personal points. Didn't get a lot of capture points, right? We didn't go capping a lot of things. We were just basically hanging out at the center there. if we'd gotten 2 more kills, we could have gotten another jump up there. Anyway, decent amount of everything. We're basically being a guardian, and we're really, I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn here or anything like that, but we were definitely outplaying the enemy fighters. I don't think we even, oh yeah, we did, we saw him. I don't have the better plane. Unfortunately, these guys in their turnier planes just weren't paying attention. I don't know if they just saw, you know, an I-210 and were like, whatever, or, you know, they just had their blinders on and weren't paying all that kind of attention. But the fact of the matter is, in a one-on-one engagement, planes like a BF-109E are really difficult for the I-210 to take down, especially a specialized one. But that being said, this still isn't a bad plane. This is not an anomaly game for me. I tend to have a reasonable amount of good games in this plane, to be honest. And I attribute it to the cannons more than anything else. But I also attribute this plane's downfall to the cannons. What do I mean by that? Well, let's just start off with the good thing about the cannons. 2 20mm cannons is really what stands out of this plane compared to the other 2 quote-unquote altitude fighters. Key 61 really isn't an altitude fighter. You know, the key line tends to get clumped in with the altitude fighters, and it's not. It's a mid-range plane. Yeah, it's not a turn fighter in the capabilities of an A6M5. The Key 61 is more on par with like a Spitfire as far as altitude is concerned. You want true altitude performance, you're gonna have one of these 3 planes. But the separation of the 3 planes is the guns. The BF-109F is probably the best of these 3 as far as the overall combined airframe is concerned. But there's definitely some reasons that this plane here, the P-51A, is better, and some reasons that the I-210 is better. The guns on the BF-109F is a single hub-mounted, so center-mounted 20mm cannon and 2 13mm machine guns. This 20mm cannon shoots reasonably far, 2,300 feet. Certainly shoots farther than the 2 20mm cannons on the I-210. But the 13mm cannons are very short range. In combination here, you've got guns, like so many German planes, you've got guns that do a little bit of everything, aren't necessarily overpowered at anything. The P-51A actually has the most damage per second of these 3 planes, which is saying something of just how low the damage per second is of the 3 of these. You only have 4 50 caliber machine guns. They're pretty short range, and so you're not even able to really get the damage per second until you're right on them, and then typically they're out turning you, because this literally is the worst turning fighter in Tier 6. We'll get into that in just a second. So if somebody realizes that you're behind them, they simply outturn you, because of course they can. You're in a P-51A. The I-210 has 2 20mm cannons that are reasonable distance. Yeah, they're not as long distance as the single 20mm cannon here, but they're pretty long distance. Medium plus, we'll say. For the tier, of course. I'm not talking like in general. But for the tier, they're medium plus. Yeah, it's the least damage per second, but they're 20mm cannons, meaning you are going to be doing more critical damage than the other 2 planes. So you're going to be knocking out wings, you're going to be knocking out tails, you're going to be knocking out engines and pilots, and all that can be very, very helpful. And can certainly, swing an engagement with an enemy plane. Keep in mind, my pilot, I mentioned this before, is a 2-point pilot. I've got Marksman 1 on here, and that's it. Next up, I'm going to try to get Marksman 2 just to get the cannons to be even more accurate, and then probably work on aerodynamics expert, or aerobatics expert. And I'll explain why I'd go for maneuverability in just a second here. So let's compare the other attributes of these altitude fighters. The altitude is basically the same for the 3 of them. It's got the exact same altitude performance number as a P-51A. P-51A certainly has better rate of climb, if I remember correctly. Barely. But still the best. Otherwise, the ceiling is exactly the same. The ceiling on the BF-109F is slightly better than these other 2 planes, but the rate of climb is slightly worse than these 2 planes, so it's kind of a wash as far as altitude performance is concerned. Maneuverability, though, The I-210 actually stands out a little bit. It's the same maneuverability as the BF-109F, significantly better than the P-51A. 10.1 seconds on the turn time. The overall optimum speed is a little bit less than the other two planes, but that's not necessarily a terrible thing. The maneuverability is again on par with the BF-109F and significantly better than the P-51A. The airspeed of the P-51A, though, that makes up for the terrible maneuverability. And the airspeed of the I-210 is actually the worst of these three, but it's not like terribly, terribly worse than the BF-109F. So all in all, besides the maneuverability or lack of maneuverability in the P-51A and the boosted airspeed of the P-51A, three of these are pretty comparable. The biggest difference you're going to see is the guns. And you know what? I kind of like the I-210 guns. They might actually be my favorite of the three. The BF-109F I still think is probably the overall best of the three, just because that slightly longer range of the one cannon can do some tricky things, and having the consistency of the two machine guns on the BF-109F is nice. You're not going to have to worry about overheating like you do on the I-210. But this plane's got some quirks to it that just allow you to do some heavy damage when need be. So keep that in mind next time you're going against an I-210. Not that you see many humans playing this plane by any means, but it's not nearly as terrible as I've been ranting about over the last 2 years. Honestly, it was just Postal Monkey not playing the I-210 very well the first time I went down this line. And so I'm going to say that this MiG line is actually a really, really good line. I used to think it had really good planes on it. The Tier 5, Tier 7, and Tier 9 especially stood out. But the Tier 6 and Tier 8 are not that bad at all. Actually, Tier 8 is actually very strong. And the Tier 10, although I think the Tier 9 is better tier for tier, the Tier 10 is actually a really good plane too. And so this is a very good line. The Soviet lines have really started growing on me. But the MiG line overall is a very solid line, and you really can't go wrong with it. There's going to be some frustrations, don't get me wrong. The biggest frustration about this plane is the guns overheat. You need to be patient with your cannons because they are only cannons. You don't have the backup of machine guns, so once you overheat them, you're a piece of metal flying in the air, and that's it. So definitely be mindful of that. But the I-210, not bad plane. Keep in mind, I've set mine up for maneuverability. The reason being is because I'm a little bit more maneuverable than the BF-109F, and I kind of want to stick with that mantra. I can't, I've already got a decent amount of airspeed, and since I'm not specialized, I can't like boost that airspeed to anything crazy anyway, so I'm just going to go for sort of a little bit more maneuverability. Once I specialize the plane, though, I'm going to put the maneuverability on the airframe with that lightweight wing frame, or lightweight airframe, whatever it's called. And then on the engine, I'm going to put uprated engine and the uprated engine and then injection boost system to just help the speed, and then maneuverability with the airframe. I don't get this engine knocked out very often at all, and so I don't see the reason a manual engine restart, at least for me. So I'm going to go with improved mixture control once I specialize the plane. Again, helping the speed even more. And last but not least, on the consumables, once I specialize it, I will definitely be going with the pneumatic control assist. That way, if I get stuck in a battle with a Spitfire or something like that, and I made some sort of mistake, I can hopefully get myself out of that situation. So, I hope my review here of the I-210 was helpful. I know that Illuminati had reached out to me in Discord and asked as a request to fly this plane. She was probably trolling me, because that's what Illuminati does. But you know what? The troll's on you. I think this plane's actually pretty good. Anyway, what are your thoughts of this plane? Is it a plane that you definitely wanted to get past and you're glad to be past it? Did you stop grinding this line as I did when I first went down this line? I actually stopped at the I-210 for a very long time. And then one day finished the grind and got out of this plane and went to the I-220, which I absolutely love, and never looked back. Have you not gotten to it and now you're looking forward to it, or at least planning of how to play the plane? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to comment down below. I do respond to everybody's comments. You can also hop into my Discord. We're always talking about planes and best practices in there too. And otherwise, I hope you have a great day. Bye.